This is Land of Havilah, Ezekiel 20a. Once again, some elders of Israel are showing up at Ezekiel's door, wanting him to give them a word from Yahweh. Verse 1. In the 7th year, in the 5th month, the 10th day of the month, some of the elders of Israel came to inquire of Yahweh and sat before me. Yahweh's word came to me, saying, Son of man, speak to the elders of Israel, and tell them, Thus says the Lord Yahweh, Is it to inquire of me that you've come? As I live, says the Lord Yahweh, I will not be inquired of by you. Will you judge them, Son of man? Will you judge them? Cause them to know the abominations of their fathers. Comment in verse 1 is the 7th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity, which makes it about 590 B.C. 2 years have gone by since chapter 1, and 1 year has gone by since chapter 8. The siege of Jerusalem will begin in another 2 years. On the exact date given in verse 1, which we can't precisely convert to the modern calendar, other than it was July or August of about 590 B.C., some Israelite elders came to Ezekiel and sat down with him to inquire of Yahweh. Yahweh told Ezekiel to tell them, Thus says Yahweh, So you've come to inquire of me, have you? I will not allow you to inquire of me. Then Yahweh said to Ezekiel, Will you judge them, Son of man? Which is basically, Are you willing to confront them, Ezekiel? Then Yahweh commanded him, Cause them to know their abominations. Coming now in a long passage from verses 5 to 32, Ezekiel will cause them to know their abominations in the wording that Yahweh gives him. Verse 5. Tell them, Thus says the Lord Yahweh, In the day when I chose Israel and swore to the offspring of the house of Jacob, and made myself known to them in the land of Egypt, when I swore to them, saying, I am Yahweh your God, in that day I swore to them to bring them out of the land of Egypt into a land that I had searched out for them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands. I said to them, Each of you throw away the abominations of his eyes. Don't defile yourselves with the idols of Egypt. I am Yahweh your God. But they rebelled against me and would not listen to me. They didn't throw away the abominations of their eyes. They also didn't forsake the idols of Egypt. Then I said I would pour out my wrath on them to accomplish my anger against them in the middle of the land of Egypt. But I worked for my name's sake that it should not be profaned in the sight of the nations among which they were, in whose sight I made myself known to them in bringing them out of the land of Egypt. So I caused them to go out of the land of Egypt and brought them into the wilderness. I gave them my statutes and showed them my ordinances, which if a man does, he will live in them. Moreover, I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies them. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They didn't walk in my statutes, and they rejected my ordinances, which if a man keeps, he shall live in them. They greatly profaned my Sabbaths. Then I said I would pour out my wrath on them in the wilderness to consume them. But I worked for my name's sake that it should not be profaned in the sight of the nations, in whose sight I brought them out. Moreover, also I swore to them in the wilderness that I would not bring them into the land which I had given them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands, because they rejected my ordinances and didn't walk in my statutes, and profaned my Sabbaths, for their heart went after their idols. Nevertheless, my eye spared them, and I didn't destroy them. I didn't make a full end of them in the wilderness. I said to their children in the wilderness, Don't walk in the statutes of your fathers. Don't observe their ordinances or defile yourselves with their idols. I am Yahweh your God. Walk in my statutes, keep my ordinances, and do them. Make my Sabbaths holy. There shall be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am Yahweh your God. But the children rebelled against me. They didn't walk in my statutes, and didn't keep my ordinances to do them, which if a man does, he shall live in them. They profaned my Sabbaths. Then I said I would pour out my wrath on them to accomplish my anger against them in the wilderness. Nevertheless, I withdrew my hand and worked for my name's sake, that it should not be profaned in the sight of the nations, in whose sight I brought them out. Moreover, I swore to them in the wilderness that I would scatter them among the nations and disperse them through the countries, because they had not executed my ordinances, but had rejected my statutes and had profaned my Sabbaths, and their eyes were after their fathers' idols. Moreover also I gave them statutes that were not good, and ordinances in which they should not live. I polluted them in their own gifts, in that they caused all that opens the womb to pass through the fire, that I might make them desolate, to the end that they might know that I am Yahweh. Therefore, Son of man, speak to the house of Israel, and tell them, Thus says the Lord Yahweh, Moreover, in this your fathers have blasphemed me, in that they've committed a trespass against me. For when I had brought them into the land which I swore to give them, then they saw every high hill and every thick tree, and they offered there their sacrifices, and there they presented the provocation of their offering. There they also made their pleasant aroma, and there they poured out their drink offerings. Then I said to them, What does the high place where you go mean? So its name is called Bama to this day. Therefore tell the house of Israel, Thus says the Lord Yahweh, Do you pollute yourselves in the way of your fathers? Do you play the prostitute after their abominations? When you offer your gifts, when you make your sons pass through the fire, do you pollute yourselves with all your idols to this day? Should I be inquired of by you, house of Israel? As I live, says the Lord Yahweh, I will not be inquired of by you. That which comes into your mind will not be at all, in that you say, We will be as the nations, as the families of the countries, to serve wood and stone. Comment Yahweh said in verses 5 to 32 in the sense of it, Ezekiel, tell them, I revealed myself to your ancestors when they were in Egypt. I swore to bring them out of slavery to the most glorious of all lands, a land flowing with milk and honey. And I said, Throw away the idols of Egypt, for I, Yahweh, am your God. But they rebelled against me. They wouldn't listen. They didn't throw away their idols and other abominations. They made me angry right away, so I said to myself, I'll not bring them out. I'll destroy them right here in Egypt. Nevertheless, I withheld my wrath and kept working with them for the sake of my own name and reputation. If I hadn't brought them out, the nations of the earth would have said, I failed. So, even though they disrespected me, I brought them out of Egypt into the wilderness to protect my name. I gave them the law, the 10 Commandments, and all the rest of the law, which if a man follows, he'll live. I also gave them my Sabbaths, speaking of the weekly day of rest and the annual holidays. The purpose of these days was for them to recognize on a regular basis that I am Yahweh, and to recognize that I set them apart to be my own. But they rebelled against me in the wilderness, just as they had in Egypt. They rejected my law, which if a man keeps, he lives. They profaned my Sabbaths terribly. Then I said, just as I had said in Egypt, I'll pour out my wrath on them and destroy them. But again, for the sake of my name and reputation, so the nations wouldn't have cause to insult me, I didn't destroy them. It was obvious to the nations that it was I who brought them out. I was on record as saying I would, and I showed the world all the plagues and the parting of the Red Sea, so it was unmistakably me. Therefore, to protect my name, I had to finish what I started. I didn't destroy you in the desert. The nations would have said I wasn't able to sustain you there, or that I couldn't complete the job I started, and so on. So I didn't destroy your ancestors, and instead I swore I wouldn't bring them into the promised land, not after they had rejected my law, profaned my Sabbaths, and clung to their idols. I turned to their children instead. I said, Don't do like your parents. Don't corrupt yourselves with their idols. I'm Yahweh. Keep my law. Keep my Sabbaths. The Sabbaths are a sign between me and you that I'm your God. But the children rebelled. They didn't observe the law which if a man observes it, he'll live. They didn't keep the Sabbaths. So I said I would pour out my wrath on them. Nevertheless, once again I held back for the sake of my own name and reputation, so that the nations wouldn't have occasion to insult me. Rather, I said I would scatter them among the nations for not keeping the law, for profaning my Sabbaths, and for clinging to their idols. Moreover, I gave them over to statutes that were not good, and ordinances in which they should not live, which is to say, I gave them over to the curses for disobedience to the law, which are recorded in Leviticus 26:14-39, curses under which they would be consumed. I held them guilty for sacrificing their firstborn by fire. They would know that I am Yahweh by my destruction of them. Ezekiel, speak to all Israel and tell them, Your ancestors did all this, but didn't stop there. Even after I brought them into the promised land, they kept it up. They converted every high hill and every large tree of that glorious land into a place for pagan sacrifice, offerings, and incense. So I confronted them by saying, "What do you mean going to your high places?" That's how the term high places became so infamous. Ezekiel, since Israel has done all this, confront them. Tell them, "Thus says Yahweh, isn't it true you pollute yourselves just like your ancestors? Don't you serve your idols like a prostitute serves her customers? When you give offering to your idols, when you burn your children to them, don't you pollute yourselves to this very day the same way your ancestors did? And then you have the nerve to approach me, to come to Ezekiel and ask me questions. As I live, I'll not let you ask me anything. You come to me hoping I'll make good things happen, but nothing of the sort will happen, because you say, 'We'll be like the other nations and serve idols made of wood and stone.'" That catches us up to the end of verse 32. Given the history Yahweh just laid out, He'll resolve everything in eternity as He's about to lay out, but that'll be in Ezekiel 20b next.